I guess this is as good a point as any to start part 2 here. And so I went through the Haltech instructions, and interestingly enough, first step in installing the Rebel LS is rip your whole car apart. Well, no, it's not actually. But this we had a little issue where I noticed the rear main, the rear between the bell housing block, what you would consider the rear main area, sprung a leak, and it was a little bit wet. I noticed when I would get on the car during the tuning process. Anytime I would go out and kind of flog it a little bit, come back, I'd get some drips on the ground, and it was always wet in that area. Tightened up the pan, thought we got it. Went to had a streetcar takeover. What would this be? Last weekend before? I think it was last weekend. And car did really well. She placed a runner-up in her class, and car did well. But the very last pass, the very top of the very last pass, it started puffing pretty good, blue. So I knew it was definitely oil. Car came back to the pits. It was fine. It wasn't smoking. Wasn't doing anything weird at all. It just happened under hard load. And sure enough, when we got it home and got up in the air, you can see it was pretty wet, pretty heavy down in that area. So went ahead and had to get it apart anyways. It turns out it's kind of a double beneficial, because since we're going to be installing this Rebel kit here, this Haltech kit, this gives me tremendous access to, well, obviously the drive line and the harness. Lets me pull the harness out pretty easy. So I've got the whole harness up here. The plan for this guy is going to be, my original plan was just to try to kind of, I saw somebody else take this, kind of just roll it all up, bundle it all up, and just kind of tuck it right here where the factory, so the factory PCM is, and just kind of bundle it and had it up here, and which is fine. The problem with that is there are some things that I need to keep, which means I need to cut the harness open. There are things on this branch over here. I get the EBCM plug, wheel speed sensor plugs, things like that. So there are some things that are integrated into here that I've got to separate. So I'm gonna have to do that. I was trying to avoid having to cut the harness open, because you're cutting open a 20-year-old harness. The tape and the stuff is all nasty and icky, and it's really a pain in the butt to open up. But I'm gonna need to do that anyway, get the start signal, which I need to keep that. So yeah, I'm gonna have to go ahead and cut it open after all. And what my plan is gonna be is not necessarily to just hack up, decapitate plugs that I'm not gonna be using. I hate doing that. What I want to do is keep this harness usable, so that if for some crazy reason, aliens came down and forced me to convert it back, I can do it. I have the stuff here. So I'm gonna cut it all open. I'm gonna take as many of these, the ejectors and knock sensor stuff. I'm gonna take as much of this stuff once I open it up, and I'm gonna try to redirect it in the harness this way, right towards the connectors. Bring as much of it over this way and kind of bundle it up, tighten it up. I can wrap it, put some new abrasion sleeve over it, so you won't even see it. It'll make this half the harness really nice and slim, and the part that'll be bulky will be kind of tucked away underneath the battery area there, so you won't see it anyway. And it'll just make it really easy to work with these branches here for the ignition or the injectors and stuff. All this will be gone, and it'll clean things up. And at that point, we go ahead and throw the Haltech harness on, and that should clean things up a lot. So that's kind of where my process is right now. That's what I'm going to start doing, hacking it up and getting this crap off. And hopefully next time you see this, it'll be a very different looking harness. See you then. Okay, so quick recap on what I've done so far, just to give you guys those who are going to do things the same way I did, or just to give you ideas. This is what I've done to this point to get this thing wired up. So the stock harness is the issue here, right? We're running this in parallel like we talked about. So we're going to have the stock computer running a number of body controls and fans and stuff like that. And the Haltech will be running everything else. So far as the factory harness goes, guys, this is a mess, isn't it? My original, there's a couple different ways you can do. You could just leave it all installed and just kind of tuck the connectors down, like, you know, next to the rails, next to where the coils go and stuff. Just kind of mush it all down and lay the Haltech on top of it. That would work. The only thing is, it's got some of the connectors, the throttle body, for example, the big 8-pin. You know, they're bulky. The map sensors up there too. The things get kind of bulky, so trying to hide those and lay the new harness on top of it's just a real pain. It makes for a cluster. It makes for just looks like a spaghetti mess. So I didn't want to do that. The other option you have is depinning, going back to the whole harness, stripping it down, which is what I did here, and then depinning everything off of the main connectors down there, and removing all the sensors that you're not going to use, which is the end result will be a much cleaner harness. You won't have that jumbled mess right there. But it's a little bit tedious. I mean, depinning is not a big deal itself. It's actually pretty straightforward. But you're going to end up where there are a number of sensors here that share common circuits. So you're going to have common grounds, right? Common low references, common 5 ground or 5 volt, circuits as well. You'll notice when you start depinning stuff, there's, like, you know, especially when you get to the ejectors and stuff, all these pink wires, for example, those are all GM 5 volt reference. And there's a bunch of them out here, and there's a splice point somewhere where there's like 4 or 5 of them get spliced out. Same thing with low references. So you're gonna come across some sensors that are gonna need to keep those. The rest of them are gonna go away. You're gonna end up having to cut wires. I really didn't want to cut the harness. My hope was that I can do this in such a fashion where that if, like I mentioned before, if I had some crazy reason had to, I can always revert back to stock. But so what I'm doing is I did strip everything out, strip the entire shell off of the harness, which that took all night long. You know, 20-year-old harness skin and tape and stuff is just pretty nasty, but I got it all off. And what I ended up doing was taking the branches, right? So the branch that would run across this side of the heads for the injectors and coils, that side of the heads, the leg that goes down this side of the block and forward, feeds a knock sensor over there, feeds what else? Coolant temp sensors on this side, cam position sensors at the front of the side. I stripped everything out, pulled the things out that I'm not going to be using, and then separated the ones that I'm going to have to keep, ones I'm going to reuse. So here I already loomed up. This is our AC compressor. So this will go down that side right there. I pulled the coolant temp sensor, right? So that's going to go on that side. Well, actually, it's going to go on this side. I added coolant temp sensor right here. Okay, it's a thermistor, so you can't split the signal. So I added a second one, and I'll go ahead and reuse that guy. I've got my current performance breakout here, the oil pressure, factory oil pressure sensor. It's a regular 5 volt 5 volt transducer type of pressure sensor, so you can split that one. And I've got other things here. I've got the what is this, oil temp and level, starter signal. Here's your oil pressure right here. So I've pulled out from the harness the items that I'm gonna need to reuse, loomed them all up, made them all stand out, made them all nice and pretty. I'm gonna tape up the ends here now so they're snug, and then the rest of this is gonna get taped up now with this thicker loom that I have over here, and that'll let me reduce the clutter. It'll be a much thinner branch going, you know, to the left there, and nothing's gonna be up top and stuff. It's gonna clean up what I've got here. I just took everything that I wasn't gonna use and pulled it and folded it back onto itself, so you can kind of see that, see the curve right there? See how it's folded over? So all the injectors, all the ignition coil pack, all the sensors, the cam position, all that stuff, that's all folded over and tucked over here. And what I'm gonna do now, I have a larger braided cover, and I'm gonna cover these up, all right? And it's gonna lie kind of here against the firewall, so you're not really gonna see it. It's gonna be covered up, it's gonna be loomed up, so you won't see it. It'll look good, whatever you do see, but it'll be tucked up here, and it'll give me a lot of room to lay the Haltech harness down and not be in the way. So I'm gonna start with this madness right now, covering it all up, and next time you see this, it should be all covered up and kind of laid out. And I'll grab the Haltech harness over here. We'll start laying it down, and I'll show you what it looks like. All right, quick update. A couple hours later, got the factory harness lined out. Got everything tucked away nice and neat. That's what this big bulky branch is here. Had to use a couple pieces of that big loom cover, like sandwiched basically, to cover it all up. But everything's everything's looped that I'm not using, kind of tucked into here. And the breakouts that I'm keeping, so got your oil pressure, already plugged it in up here. Coolant temp, right here is this guy right here. We've got our, let's see, our crank position. Yep, the crank position, it's already plugged in. And this is the style that has the wire that comes out. So I just ran the wire over to this guy, made my own little connector. I gave it a label so we know what it is, and that's the crank signal to the PCM. So that goes to the PCM, factory PCM. Everything else is here, is ready to be plugged in. Got the factory grounds all plugged in, so it's all kind of nice, neat, and tucked away. And it's routed kind of the same way, it was before. Tucked in, plugged, all that good stuff. So we're good to go. At this point, next step of the process is go ahead and integrate the Haltech harness on the car. And I think the next thing you see should have the harness on the engine. And at that point, we'll be ready to put it back up in the car and rock and roll. That's how she looks. Okay, part 2 of part 2. That's the second half of part 2. I actually filmed this last night, but I was too pooped to pop, and it definitely sounded like it. So I figured come in here a little refreshed. The harness is on, and it's on there. So it's pretty good. Figured, kind of give my impressions here. Talked about the factory harness. I've got the factory harness running under here. You can see right there is the factory stuff, and then the Haltech harness is laying on top of it. And this is all gonna get up and go in the car. Everything's laid onto the car, connected, plugged in. I mean, as you would expect, the Haltech stuff is high quality. High quality connectors, the braiding, the looming, all that stuff. It seems really good quality. Their Deutsch connectors are actual Deutsch connectors, marked, stamped with the Deutsch markings on them. So it's pretty cool. Like I said, as you would expect, it's good quality stuff. Everything connected just fine, no issues there. I really like their breakout. They're kind of like sub harnesses and stuff. Got the injector one, which Holly does have that too on the Terminator. But they also have, like, for the alternator, you run different style alternators. You'll have different attachments, well, they have one I mentioned earlier for different style, 2-pin, 4-pin, whatever this is. This is a 4-pin one. A couple of the this is pretty cool. They do this on the on the cam sensor, and they do this on the on this alternator as well. Depending on what your I don't know if you're gonna be able to see this or not, but depending on what style, there's your cam connector right there. So yeah, depending on what style you're using, you've got the ones that are have that stupid pigtail, which actually this car does have, or you got the ones that go straight to the top there. So they'll leave the 2 pins that you'd have to flip-flop unterminated for you, so you can just figure out which way you want to run them and then clip them in yourself. It's a nice little thought, instead of having to sit there and fight to depin them the way I know Holly just gives them to you, just straight pins. So if you got to change it, you got to depin it to do that. Not a big deal, but just a small little touch. It's pretty nice. This thing actually has the pigtail connector, but I at the last minute decided to connect it straight to the top. Not realizing that you can't take that little pigtail thing off with the belt and everything on, so it's just gonna sit there. I've got the connector sitting in front of the old one, so it'll kind of lean the old one back, so I don't have to worry about it hitting the belt or anything for the time being. Next time I have stuff apart, I can pull it off. But yeah, they give you these these sub Terminator harnesses. That one, there's one for the throttle, of course. There's one for the map sensor. There's a map sensor right here. Map sensor has a connector somewhere hidden back there. I tucked everything away, but it's all good stuff. It's really good, high quality stuff. If there's one I wouldn't even call it a quirk. It's more of an observation. It's not a complaint at all. It's just strange. But I don't know if this has to do with the whole maybe left-hand drive, right-hand drive stuff. I know this is obviously an Australian company, but some of the leads, right, the connector leads are like comically long. I mean, if you relocate your knock sensors to like the muffler area, you've got enough lead to connect them. I mean, they're really long. And again, I don't know if that has to do with the difference between, you know, the seating position left to right, if that has any bearing on it whatsoever. It's just, I don't know. But if you're used to, you know, certain LS stuff, you're used to doing things in the default way, which is the harness comes out here, right? You've got your crank position sensor right there. Your knock sensor, if you're using it on this side, is going to be right there. You know, oil pan things going to be right there. Everything's kind of just curved right here. That's the way it is. Factory Holley mimics it the same way. This one actually, those leads are really, really long. I'm assuming what I ended up doing is actually running them up behind the back, up, you know, kind of along the area between the valve cover and the intake where the injector sits, underneath and then down. Actually, you can see it. You can see it right there. Back down and under and kind of that way. And I had enough lead. I mean, it was perfect in that route, so I'm assuming that's kind of what they want you to do. You know, I don't know if there's some other reason behind it, but yeah, you got some really long leads. So if you're, you know, putting this in, you know, I don't know, a truck or something like that, you need some really, really long wiring. You definitely have that. I mean, I'd rather have too much than too little, obviously. So yeah, that was just kind of the only little quirk. The other thing is, because this is an oddball Corvette, of course, you've got the transmission all the way in the back. So, ow. Yikes. The T56, here it is, connector is a little short, doesn't quite reach the trans, but Ballinger Motorsports sells an extension for this. I'm sure you could probably find other ones, but Ballinger, I ordered theirs, be here in a few days. Got a 36-inch connector, so I'll just leave the closeout plate off until that gets in, plug that in, and I'll have my VSS connections. Got the tick shifter installed yesterday. It's nice and easy when you have everything out. And yeah, otherwise she's pretty good to go. Like I said, everything's connected, everything's good there, so we're solid. I got this whole big thing going on back here, of course. I try to tidy this up as much as possible. There's only so much you can do. There's only so much area you have to work with, and you know, with the wires running all different directions, and that's the one issue too when you've got these super long leads. I actually routed things to take up as much room as possible, so I don't have a bunch of clumping and stuff back here. And once I kind of took it all back off and rerouted it, I was able to use a lot more length and alleviate some of what was back here. But you're still left with a good bit of connectors and wires and loom and stuff. So I try to set it up in such a way where it won't be, you know, I'm thinking of servicing in the car. If I've got to pull the intake off, what's going to be in the way, and that kind of stuff. And that's how I have it laid out here. Obviously, when it's in the car, most of the stuff is hidden away. You don't really see it anyway. It runs parallel with the firewall and run underneath the battery, so you're not going to see those terminated ends and stuff. But that's it. That's all. She looks good. It's good quality stuff. Looking forward to getting it in the car now. The next step is going to be mating the driveline to the car, and I've got to find out a spot where to let's see where I'm going to drill. They give you this really nice firewall grommet here as a pass-through for the harness into the car. So I've just got to find a spot to drill into. Here's a factory spot right here, maybe underneath it, maybe off to the side of it. I'm not sure. I'll have to get in there and find out where, but that's gonna be the next thing. Just find a hole that passes through the inside, and at that point, it's just plug and play. Find a spot to mount the unit itself, start plugging things in there. Show you guys what I use for my trigger, for my 12-volt trigger for ignition. Got your input output harness here. These are the main plugs. Inputs and outputs are here. I'm only gonna have one output to drive the second pump. Right, I'm using a Hobbs switch now, so getting rid of all that garbage. This will be utilized for that. And inputs, well, I do have the flex fuel. It's the only thing I'm gonna end up having to use for the time being is flex fuel. So everything else is golden, man. I think I showed you guys last time, but I do have the second cool temperature sensor right here. All right, that runs into the factory. I looped this up because I got too much here, but that runs to the factory. So you still, the crank, I made a little second CKP2 little crank off the splitter. So I got a signal that runs that way down and into the crank position sensor, splits that off, and the oil pressure, got the current performance harness right there, splitting that off. So everything is good. Everything is say it's nice and neat, but it's not right now. It'll look a lot nicer when it's in the car, and that'll be the next step. So hopefully next time you see a video, this thing's in the car and wired up, and we'll take it from there.